Welcome to the What's Your Weird Story podcast.
Everyone has at least one good story.
And some of us have stories that are just to the left of normal.
We're interested in the ones that push the boundaries of what we can perceive.
Stories that defy explanations.
Stories with an air of mystery.
Stories we might not share
for fear of being thought of differently.
But don't worry, we're all friends here. So, what's your weird story? Hello, Weirdsville. How's everybody doing out there in the Weirdsville Tri-County area? We're 3 counties, 3 countries, 3 worlds, maybe? I don't know. It's us. It's as we always are. Adam and Barry on the What's Your Weird Story podcast. I am Adam of the Adam and Barry, and Barry is Barry. Hello, Barry.
We're here, we're there, we're everywhere. We are all at once in your ears.
Yes. And my introduction, at least, is all over the place. That's great. For sure.
That's great. It's different. It's new. It's exciting.
Yeah, man. So how's things going, man, dude?
Good. Very good, sir. Very good. Leaves are continuing to fall, and it's been cold, man. Got some freaking nice cold our and everything's good. Family's great, and looking forward to our basketball season starting here in a couple more weeks. We got one more football game. Hopefully we win. If we win, we continue. If we don't, we're done for the season. So we're busy, man. We're busy. How about you? How are things out your way?
Doing well, man. As you know, and I don't know if I mentioned it on the podcast before, but about a month or so ago, I hurt my back.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was kind of down for a bit, not really been able to work too much with that because it was just like a pulled muscle or something there.
Yeah. In
the lower back. Felt like somebody was stabbing me.
Yeah.
Sometimes, whenever especially when I would try to stand up.
Yeah.
So I've been dealing with that, and it's pretty much, it's not 100%, but it's a lot better now.
Good.
So, so that's been good. And I didn't get hooked on opioids because I didn't go to the doctor.
Positive.
Because I knew that I knew what it was.
Right.
And so I knew that basically I can take some Aleve or some aspirin and rest.
Right.
And not be too mobile.
Yes.
And that would mean that I could get by with that.
Yeah.
I didn't need to get. If I went to the doctor, I was just going to be getting really heavy drugs.
Of course.
And which that could be fun, I guess. But I just
yeah.
I didn't want to deal with that.
Got to be careful. Got to be careful with that stuff. You know.
If you've ever had any kind of muscle pull or anything like that.
Oh, it's terrible.
Yeah. So they tend to give out the good stuff for that.
Yeah.
But I figured either they were going to give me something that's going to completely wipe me out, or it's just going to be basically a leave.
Yeah.
Same thing. So I just, I took care of it. I watched it. I saw it starting to, be good one day and bad. So I kind of kept track of it, just as as you do as a conscientious adult grown up person, being responsible and, without trying to make any unnecessary trips to the doctor.
Right.
So So anyway.
Yeah.
It's it's doing a lot better.
Good.
Like I said, not 100%.
Good.
But pretty good.
Good.
Pretty good.
Well, and as you know, as a 20-something-year-old man, you don't heal. Yes. You don't heal like you did when you were younger.
Right.
And so you find that as you get older, you kind of have to pay a little more attention to your body and what you're doing to it. So it's just one of those things that I still have a hard time with saying, okay, I can't do that because I'm not a young guy anymore. I'm going to pay the price, for weeks to come if I don't slow down or whatever. So it's just part of it. But glad you're feeling better, man.
Thank you, sir. So yeah, during that time, I had a lot of time to do some reading and some research and stuff. And I don't know if you heard about this, about it's all over the news a few weeks ago. But Miley Cyrus, maybe it's about a month ago now. Time flies during this quarantine,
Yeah.
But Miley Cyrus did an interview in Interview magazine, and she talked about this time that she and a friend of hers were in California, and she says they got chased down by some sort of UFO, and that she even made eye contact with the people, the things in the craft.
Really? Wow.
Yes. So she described it as a flying snowplow.
Hold on, let me think about flying snowplow. Okay.
She said, quote, "It had this big plow in the front of it, and was glowing yellow." End quote.
Wow.
And she said her friend also saw it, and so they were confident, about each other. Seeing that, she said that she saw a being sitting in the front of it.
Okay.
I guess operating it.
Wow.
And it looked, and again, quoting her, "It looked at me and we made eye contact."
Damn.
And I think that's what really shook me, looking into the eyes of something that I couldn't quite wrap my head around.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So she throws that out there. And then, of course, she has to kind of say she's not exactly sure, because she also admits that she had just bought some weed wax from some guy in a parking lot.
That's the heavy duty shit, man.
Yeah.
What do they call that? Is it it's a new what do they call that, man? Dabbing. Yeah. Which, if weed isn't strong enough for you, man, I mean, seriously, I don't know.
Dude, ever since everything went legal in California and Oregon and Colorado, the game has been
it's
elevated so much.
Yeah.
There's so much more.
Yeah.
That they've got the weed wax, which is the dabbing. There's they grow all sorts of kinds of different stuff.
Yeah.
And there's the vapes. They have vape pen stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean,
yeah.
Good Oklahoma boys like us have very little knowledge of any of this type of stuff. It's all hearsay from people I know.
Yes.
Who live in California,
100%,
and Oregon, and Colorado.
Right.
And actually, I'm not even joking about that. I do have friends out there, and I asked them about it because I'm curious about. Just everything in general. Of course, that's a big thing, especially now that it's Isn't it legal there in Oklahoma?
Well, it's medical. Yeah, medical is legal, and it's really quite interesting. It's really boomed here. I mean, it's a huge market, and I think it's really blown people away as far as how well it's done. Because the first couple of years, it just didn't look like it was ever going to slow down. Just, dispensaries everywhere, and everybody's growing, and all kinds of grow operations and stuff like that. But I've never dabbed or had, seen any of that stuff. I just have heard about it. Yeah. So I can't really say as far as, how that might play into what she saw. But it's an interesting story. I've never heard of a snowplow shaped UFO. That's interesting. But the fact that she says she saw a being in it and she made eye contact with it, that's pretty interesting. And that's quite a tale to tell whenever you're, a big pop star, although, kind of her persona can handle that kind of, story. So, but that's interesting, man. I never heard that. I never heard that, so that's fascinating. What's cool about that is that you've got some other ones that you've been looking into, and I think we're gonna do a whole episode on that for Patreon. Is that right?
That's right. We are going to have a nice little discussion about several celebrities who have seen UFOs and are being very open and public about them, and some of them are people who are, more dubious than others.
Right.
Some people that you would be like, oh, really? Wow. And then they're, can be considered more down to earth,
Yeah, that's cool.
And Miley Cyrus is one of those stars. She's, these young stars. She was the Disney Hannah Montana growing up. So she had that. And then she spent a few years going crazy, establishing herself as herself and not, the Disney thing. So basically rebelling,
Right.
And she toured with the Flaming Lips.
Right.
Did you know that?
I knew that. I remember when that whole thing was going on, they were hanging out a lot together.
Yeah.
And I was always like, that is such a weird fit. But, hey, man, it's probably a lot more interesting than what I'm giving it credit for. So,
yeah. Well, my friend Dan Deacon, who's the incredible musician himself and electronic musician, he was open for Miley on part of that tour. Okay. Which is just crazy again to me, but but also it makes sense because like she wanted a more crowd of her age people. She wanted to get kind of that maybe indie cred or that kind of thing.
Yeah, street cred. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
man.
like all the Pitchfork people and all that stuff. So she
I get it.
And so she asked Dan to be part of it, and why would you not?
Yeah. The thing is with her too, she's super talented. I mean, I don't think anybody could say that she's not. I have less of a problem with people like her being in the eye of the public, like, when you think about pop stars, than other people that don't deserve it. There's so many people out there that I just cringe. But no, I get it, man. And so, hey, kudos to her for using her platform to talk about things like this. Yeah. Kudos to her for using her celebrity to bring people out on the road like that need that recognition. And so I think it's a positive.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Whether you like her personally or not, there are those things where she is trying to do things, and make, more than just pop music. She's, exploring as an artist. So.
Definitely, man. Definitely.
So anyway, check out the join our Patreon, that episode, as well as some extra, all of the goodie stuff. If you join at the top level there, you can get those and bonus content that you won't be able to find anywhere else.
That's right.
Cool.
Today we have a guest on from Brooklyn, New York. His name is Andrew. He's a really cool guy. He's got he's got a cool couple of stories, and he's got a cool thing that he's working on. And he reached out to us to get on, and he's a great guest.
Yeah, it's really cool stuff, really great stories, and a cool project that we'll let him tell you about it. So, Andrew, thank you for joining us. What's your weird story?
My weird story started pretty early on in life, and has sort of compounded since. So it kind of starts before I was even born. I was born in February of '86, and in June of '85, my parents moved into this old farmhouse. It was my mom and my dad and my older brother. I was on the way. And this house was built in 1912, and they didn't know anything about it when they moved in, but pretty shortly after, they started having paranormal experiences. There's no other way to put it. So they kind of came to terms with that the best they could. And then I was born, and my first memory, it's hard to put early memories in order chronologically, but as far as I can tell, my very first memory is a paranormal experience.
Oh, wow.
And it was shortly after I was born, my dad ended up moving out. So it was just my mom and my brother and I in the house. And my mom worked nights, and my brother was in first grade or kindergarten. He was in school. So when he would go to school, my mom would sit me in front of Nickelodeon, take a quick nap, try to catch up on some sleep. And then, eventually she'd get up and we'd go about our day. And I have this very vivid memory of I'm sitting in front of the TV and I'm watching cartoons. I'm watching I can remember the cartoon. It was called David the Gnome. It was an old Nickelodeon cartoon.
Dude, I loved that show so much. Whenever I was sick in middle school, which would have been around this time for you, that would be one of my favorite things to watch, especially when you're sick. I'm sorry to interject here, but when you're sick, it's already a really wild and kind of surreal cartoon, but when you're sick and you've got like a fever and you're watching it, kind of half asleep, half awake, man, it takes on a whole other level of weirdness. But
it is a very surreal show from what I remember. No, I'm glad that you know what it is for sure. So I'm sitting there watching this show, and all of a sudden I hear, this was a 2-story farmhouse, and upstairs was one big open room, and my brother and I shared it. And I hear someone coming down the stairs, like to the living room. But I knew that it was just me and my mom there. And I mean, I don't know how old I was. I couldn't have been more than 4 years old, 3 years old. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, that's just the ghost that lives here with us. Because my mom had told my brother and I stories that, or not stories, like not she wasn't trying to frighten us, but she had just told us that she believed that there was like something else that like shared this house with us. So like my first memory is like me hearing something very distinctively walking up and down the stairs that wasn't there. And like, as a 3-year-old or whatever, like me processing that as just like, oh, that's just the ghost that is like our roommate that lives with us in this house.
Oh man.
So
you weren't frightened at all. I mean, I'd imagine at that age.
I wasn't. No, I mean, I was like, I don't, when that memory like comes back and plays back, I don't remember being frightened. I think there were times where I was frightened in that house, but that wasn't one of them. I was just, it was like the middle of the day. It was like in the morning. It was probably like 10 a.m. or something. Just like, oh, that's just the ghost.
Wow.
Well, with your mom being kind of down to earth and just cool with it, and telling you, hey, we do have these things that you won't see, but they're here, trying saying ghosts are okay, not to be scared, and that would probably made it where I would imagine that would made it where you were comfortable with the idea of that just being the ghost and then going back to David the Gnome.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think you nailed it, because it was like, it was just something that she explained to my brother and I think I took it. I think I was like a pretty serious little kid. So I took it serious, but not like gravely serious. I was just like, oh, okay, this is like something that an adult is telling me that like is a serious matter. And my brother was sort of like, oh, heck yeah. Like, I want to see the ghost. Like, why doesn't it never come talk to me? Like, he was like very excited about it. But yeah, I think you're right. I think that the way my mom approached it sort of maybe put me at ease. So that was, then a string of things happened in that house. Most of the activity always centered around my mom, and she had experiences up until she moved out of it. So
how long was that? How long were you guys there?
I think my mom moved out in 92. Okay. I thought I wrote it down so I'd get it right. But so she was there for 91 or 92. She was there for like 6 or 7 years.
Okay. Wow.
So, I had a couple of other experiences that I can remember that were very similar, just like noises or bumps, or like, I have one that's much less vivid of like something like in my peripheral vision that like wasn't there, but I can't really hone in on that one as much. But my mom had a bunch of experiences there. She saw like a full bodied apparition there once.
Wow.
Which really kind of tripped her out. And she, like I said, she continued to have them up until the point when she moved out. And even then, like before she moved, she had like an inspection done, and there was like some wiring that needed to be replaced in an overhead light fixture. And it was a really old farmhouse. Like I said, it was built in like 1912. And so the electrician like goes down to the basement. It's like those big old fashioned fuses, those like round ones you have to like pull out.
Yeah.
Pulls those out of like where he's doing his work, like disconnects the lighting fixture, and it's completely disconnected. He pulls it down, and like the light bulb lights up, like fully illuminated.
Whoa.
And he was like, the way my mom tells it, I wasn't there, but he looked at her and was like, what the F? You got to tell me what's going on here. And she was just like, I don't know where to start. Weird things happen in this house. I probably should have told you. He like finished his work as quick as he could and like took off like before the door was even shut behind him. Like he was gone. So yeah.
Wow. Well, that's not really something you bring up to somebody like that you don't know very well.
Right.
You're just
so, yeah.
You're just hoping he gets in and out without anything happening. You know.
Yeah,
That's hilarious.
Especially your electrician. You don't be telling.
Yeah.
You know, so you're trying to sell this house. You want
Right,
you know you
right.
you don't want people to think that you're crazy beforehand, or afterhand is totally fine.
Right.
You know, sell the ghost with the house, but while
Right.
you're trying to close in that market, that's when you're. I don't know. I don't know if they have to disclose that they're haunted there.
Yeah.
That's
Some
a good
states
point.
you
do.
You do. So it's
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah. People have won lawsuits over that. Well, won and lost at lawsuits over that.
Right.
It's pretty wild.
But there have been famous ones that where people tried to get their money back basically because they bought a haunted house it wasn't disclosed to them, and then crazy, scary, spooky shit happened, and so
Wow.
I can see it both ways. I mean,
Oh yeah, it's hard to prove. I'm sure
yeah,
in a court of law, that'd be tough to prove.
but
Now-
I mean, sorry,
No,
there.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say it just seems like I don't know. It's ethical to say, hey, there was somebody murdered here, or maybe somebody died
Right.
here. I think that
Right.
should be like you should do that. I
Yeah.
understand why you can't why people are hesitant to say, it's haunted, or at least say something. Well, the last tenant
Right.
said thought it was haunted or something, because that really, I mean, that's gonna change some people's opinions. Absolutely, for sure.
Sure.
So.
Absolutely.
Totally.
yeah,
It makes me wonder though. Like it's like, do you when you're disclosing it to someone, are you like then on the edge of them like creating their own tulpa and like haunting it themselves?
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. Yeah, because I've known a lot of folks that I wouldn't believe much of what they say. So if they're talking shit, it's like, well, maybe you're just crazy.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
So, but did your mom have anything like that happen before she had moved into this place, or this is like kind of her first go around with this type of stuff?
Yeah, this was her first experience that she ever had in this way. And I mean, there's a list of them. I wrote this essay about it earlier in the summer and showed it to her when I was finished, and then it sort of got her reflecting on. And then a couple of days later, I had this email of like every experience that she could remember, like compiled for me.
Wow!
And there were a bunch of them. I mean, the full bodied apparition thing was like pretty wild sounding. She it was like late at night. It was like 1 a.m. and she was like, my brother and I were asleep upstairs, and she was finishing doing something around the house. Like locks up, turns the lights off, goes into her room to go to sleep. And weirdly, her room was on the first floor and was in the corner of the house. And there should have been 2 windows in it, but the people who she bought it from had drywalled over the windows on the inside. They said that they worked night shifts and they did it. They were remodeling the bedroom anyway, and they just decided to do it. And she actually worked night shifts as well, so she didn't mind, and she never had them open back up. So her room was like pitch black, and she like went to bed, was in bed for a few minutes, started hearing like a man's voice somewhere in the house. And she was like, she knew that she locked the door, but she got worried anyway. My brother and I are upstairs, and so she like kind of sits up and is alert. And then all of a sudden she said like as bright as like the high beams of a car headlights illuminated her room. And like, as her eyes adjusted, she could make it like kind of either her eyes adjusted or the light dimmed a little bit, and she could kind of make out like it's different. The way she describes it is different sounding than when people say they see like a full body apparition that's sort of like transparent or whatever. This was almost like an aura. She couldn't make out features. It was just like kind of like the silhouette sort of. And she said it tried to speak to her, and it was like so low and murmured that she couldn't understand it. And yeah, I mean, wow. I don't even know what you would say back to it at that point.
Right. Wow.
That is, yeah. That I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know what to say to it in the first place.
Yeah.
Hello seems a little. I don't know. Informal? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wild.
Probably more along the lines like, what the shit? So,
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that's my initial reaction. But
Yeah, I'm sure you'd be just freaked out. Like your brain's trying to compute what the hell you're looking at.
Right.
You know?
and that is kind of an unusual, or I mean, yeah, it's unusual for, like you said, for the type of a full body, spirit, or whatever it is. Did she say it was? So it was just a silhouette. So it was all, the body was all black. It was just the aura, like you said.
Yeah, that's the way she tells it. It sounded like, the way that I interpreted it was like that there was like enough light coming from somewhere that like she just couldn't make out what was in the middle. I don't know. I never really asked if it specifically, if it was just like, a black shadow, or if like she could make out any of it. It was just like whatever this light source was just sort of only allowing her to like see the silhouette shape.
Right.
So, I don't know.
Wow.
I wonder if it was some kind of an alien or an abduction or type thing.
I mean, yeah. Why? I mean, that I feel like I've heard more stories that would align with that than I have like seen spirits that look like that.
Right, because like it sounds like a shadow person, but they're not illuminated. They're not, they're not going to be putting off the light like that, and they're definitely more of a, they have that negativity attached to them that people always. That's one thing they always talk about is how
how scared they are.
How scared they are, exactly, and how the feeling of terror. But I don't know, man. It's food for thought for sure.
Right.
So
she never felt like she was in danger at all with any of that.
No, she never did. She sort of figured out a way for us to live like as harmoniously as possible with whatever was there. There was some activity that I guess could be like sort of poltergeist trickstery. Like she would wake up and like the thermostat would be like all the way down, like, in the middle of the winter, or or like lights flickering, or like, the dryer coming on in the middle of the night, that sort of stuff. But no, I don't think she was ever felt threatened. And I think that experience in the bedroom was like by far the most terrifying, or most like up close, experience that she had.
Sure.
Yeah. It sounds like that the poltergeist or trickster was like maybe a ghost stepdad, because he's turning down turning heat down, right. Using the appliances at night, just kind of trying to be inconspicuous, but not doing any kind of a good job at it. Right. So
that's true.
You may have nailed it, man, because so she like eventually like looked into some of the former owners, and the people who owned it before it sat vacant for a while before my parents bought it. But the people who owned it before that, like the dad of the family, like he passed away at his job. He worked for General Motors, because this was in Michigan. He worked for General Motors. He passed away at his job. He had a heart attack, but his family allegedly believed that he came back to the house. And so my mom sometimes wondered if that was like one of the things that was there. And she thought that there were maybe a couple of them there. There was also, she found out that there was so the house that we were in was built in 1912, but it sat on a foundation that was built in the 1800s. And she didn't know exactly how old, but there was a fire that burnt the original house down. Mm-hmm. And then the new house was built on the foundation. Right. So like, I mean, if there was ever a paranormal red flag, that feels like one.
Sure, man.
Yeah. All you need to do is throw in a, Indian burial ground, and there you have it.
Yeah. No kidding.
You get want, but yeah.
I'm always, curious as to when these houses that are haunted are built, because we have actually had some hauntings in places that are relatively new. You know what I mean? But that seems to me that's less of the rule. You know what I mean? Like, obviously there's so much more time for things to happen when you have an old structure like that and a foundation that old. I was just watching this it's like a Ghost Hunters or something like that, where they did this for Halloween. They did that old mansion up in, Rhode Island, I think it is. This mansion's like huge. It's like 50,000 square feet or something. But the house itself is two different houses put together. One of them was built in Washington, D.C., and then dismantled brick by brick and moved up there and put in place. And then they married it with another house. And that was so odd to me because I'm like, how does that work? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, because oftentimes these things are sort of like attached to places. But then if you disassemble the thing and you move it, does it still, do those, you know, what you hear about entities, are they still attached? Are they attached to the physical structure? You know what I mean? It's just weird, man. Are they attached to the ground that it's on? Do you know? But this place is like super haunted. I mean, before they even got cameras rolling, there was wild shit going on. So, and it had been... It had been a bunch of different things throughout the years. You know, it was like a military stronghold for a long time. It was a, you know, hospital, I think, for a while.
Yeah, that is a great question. And I don't know, because I think I'm with you. My initial reaction is like, it's like the place, right? It's
right.
But then I guess it's how you define the place. And then you hear about haunted objects, you know, as well. So I don't know.
True. Yeah.
Could be a combo of that. That's what I was thinking, that, you know, because we do know, or we hear lots of stories about haunted objects where they, you know, carry whatever it is with them, you know, or even themselves are, you know, like Annabelle, the doll of legend,
right. Whether
that's, you know, or whatever that's based on. And then there was the one that before that was, oh gosh, it was down in Florida. There was the
yeah. I know what you're talking about.
The little boy doll.
Yeah.
Who was really like mischievous and really like scary, and would talk back to the little kid, and he kept it on. And oh gosh, I wish I remembered things as clearly when I'm trying to talk about them as I used to. But
don't they?
Yeah,
don't people bring it offerings or something like that, or something like I've heard? I don't know. Maybe I'm making that up. But I thought that there was a doll like that people would like bring like peace offerings to, or something weird like that. I don't know. But is Annabelle the one that who is that? Was that Lorraine? What's her name?
Yeah, I think so. Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Right.
That
they kept.
Robert. Sorry.
Robert. That's right.
He was in a little sailor suit, and he was one of the earlier haunted dolls that we know about in legend and stuff. I'm sure it's one of the more famous ones, at least. Sorry.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, you're listening to the What's Your Weird Story podcast. You probably knew that already because you're listening or downloaded to the episode off of your iTunes or your Spotify or whatever place you get your podcast from. We want to thank you for listening. We also want to remind you to like us, follow us, subscribe to us, make sure that you get your new podcast episode every week. We'd also like to ask you to rate and review so that we can grow our audience and we can have more friends, we can have more stories. So thanks for listening to What's Your Weird Story.
So yeah.
So later on, my mom, you know, getting back to that story, we had a babysitter who lived next door, and their family had lived there for a long time. And she finally like got it out of the babysitter that was like, the babysitter was like, yeah, my dad like told me to never bring this up unless you did. But yeah, like this house is like haunted AF. Like everybody knows it. So that was like a little bit of I mean, affirmation from my mom. And I think it made her feel better in a weird way.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like, you know, she wasn't manifesting this thing herself, but she had experiences like, I mean, the whole time she was there, she would hear like up in the room where my brother and our room where we slept, middle of the night, she'd hear like a Victrola playing, like a scratchy, poppy Victrola, and like go up there. There's nothing there. You hear like tapping from inside of like this big, old-fashioned built-in cabinet, like this permanent cabinet fixture in the kitchen. You hear like tapping from in there. Just like, yeah. It's the sort of stuff that, like, if it wasn't coming from my mom, and if literally my very first clear memory wasn't of an experience in this house, I would probably be like, that sounds like a little too on the nose for a haunted house.
Sure.
Right.
But like, I mean, it's hard to dispute it when it is that close to home, I guess.
Sure.
Or literally home.
Right. Yeah, literally home. I mean, obviously, so your brother never really experienced those things, right? Like, you're the only one?
I think he also had experience, or has memories of hearing things walking around maybe, but he never had anything like my mom did, I don't know. I haven't brought it up to him in a couple of years. He's not as open-minded about the subject as I am, but I think that my mom, my dad definitely had experiences. He corroborated some of the stuff that my mom had experienced before he moved out. And yeah, just crazy stuff that, like, definitely sent me off into the world of weird at like a very young age.
Sure.
Nice.
Did that continue for you? Did you continue having weird experiences like that?
No, not really. I mean, not for a long time. I like many of people of like my generation, your dude's generation, like after that, like get into like Unsolved Mysteries and X-Files and like, reading whatever, Goosebumps or whatever growing up. So like, I definitely always had, I feel like that led me to that path of being interested in the weird stuff, but I didn't have another experience like that until I was, 17 years later, 18 years later, my first year of college, I had like one other paranormal experience that I can't really debunk. So,
okay.
So that one was like, moved out of the house for the first time. Like, I have an apartment with friends for the first time. So it's like, oh yeah, now we can like go like ghost hunting or like urban exploring or whatever without any parents like checking in on us. So we found this place. I went to school in Lansing, Michigan, and there's this town about 20 minutes east of Lansing called Bath, Michigan. And there was this pretty horrific thing that happened there in I wrote it down so I'd remember, 1927.
Okay.
This like disgruntled dad who was like, basically it came down to like, he was mad about an increase in his property taxes. He blew up an elementary school.
Oh shit.
It was like May 18th, 1927. And 38 kids and 6 teachers died in this thing. It was like tragedy. This dude was just, and then he took his own life. Just like a really tragic incident. So a couple of friends and I went to go check out the area. There's nothing remaining of the school, but there's like a memorial park, and we read about it. We went to go check out this area, and nothing to speak of. We were like taking some photos. I think someone had a digital recorder, like proper amateur ghost hunting, whatever.
Yeah.
But nothing's happening, nothing to speak of. So like on our way out of town, we passed like the main cemetery of the town, and we're like, oh, there were probably some children buried in there from this disaster, this tragedy. So we go, like, we're walking around that. Again, nothing's happening. It's just like we're walking around in the dark, like 18-year-olds do. And then all of a sudden, my friend who's with me, he's like 15 yards ahead of me. He turns around and he starts to say like, I'm feeling like really weird. And as he says that, I'm like, my digital camera is already up to my eye, and I'm snapping a picture, and the flash goes off. And through like the eyepiece, as he's at the same time that he had turned around to say that, I saw something in the eyepiece that like shouldn't have been there. And I was like, what is that? So I go to play it back, and then like, of course, like the battery's like dead, like it drops out, it's dead. And they were fine before. So like, go to my car, grab some extra battery, put it in, and hit playback on the camera. And I have this photo that, like, again, if this was a photo that I just like came across on Reddit, I'd probably be like, yeah, I don't know.
Right.
But like for me, it's this photo where there's definitely something in front of the lens and then in the foreground, and then my friend is in the background. And I mean, I don't really, and I don't mean this to offend anyone, but I don't really put too much stake in like orbs in photography.
Sure.
I think that I think that a lot of that is just, misidentified, whatever.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
But above my friend is like an orb that is like not like a piece of dust orb. And then there's this other thing in the photo, and we're like freaking out. We're like, oh man, this is crazy. We go back to the spot where we take it, and like it just so happens to be over the headstone of the little girl who died in that school.
Wow.
We hadn't noticed that prior, and we hadn't actually found. We weren't like super diligently looking, but we were like looking casually, and we hadn't found anybody else up until that moment who had the correct date, like the timeline or whatever. So yeah, I don't know. That was another one that another weird story that I can't explain. Can I send you dudes the photo?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Please, man.
Can I send it through Skype? Let's see.
You should be able to in the chat. You can.
Yeah.
That's wild. We had recently someone send us a video of some odd orbs that were in her kid's bedroom. And I'm like you, like the whole. Oh wow, wow. That's like some crazy mist weirdness, man.
Oh, dude.
Wow.
Dude.
Strange. I don't know.
Wow.
Like,
and you
okay,
didn't see that until you took that picture.
Like as the flash went off, it wasn't there. While we were just walking around, but I did. As the flash went off, like I saw something in the eyepiece, and then so it was like September, I think. It was like a little chilly in Michigan,
right.
So I was like, no one with us was smoking. I'm like, is it someone's breath? So we like did some tests where I like just had someone stand right in front of the lens and like exhale, and it just wasn't the same. And even like the internal like light meter on the camera, like when it hit the breath, like the condensation, it would bounce back and it would recognize that. But like looking at this one, like the histogram, it just like went straight through it. It didn't recognize, like the light meter didn't recognize anything there.
Wow.
So.
Okay, so let's describe this for everybody at home. And can we you mind if we put this up on the
no, please, go.
Am I seeing things, or is there a face in that?
All right, I didn't want to lead anybody here, but
holy shit, man.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take it to another level here, okay? So I'm going to send you a photograph of the girl who was buried under our feet where this photo was taken.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you see that, Adam? Do you see that face in there?
Yeah, I kind of do.
It's toward the top. It's the top of the smoke in there. It looks like there's a face looking up, sort of looking out.
Okay, so let me describe this real quick again so that people can have a general idea. So we've got here's the ground is, it's a cemetery, so we got green grass. Right about the middle picture over on the left, there's a grave marker. Then about 3/4 of the way back, you see Andrew's friend. He's in a hoodie and jeans, and he's got something in his hand. I think it's a camera, maybe.
I think it was like a handy cam.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. Above him there is an orb, and it looks like it kind of looks like a microbe or a single-celled organism, that kind of a shape, where it's got kind of something that looks a little like a nucleus. Do you see that?
Yeah,
totally.
Yep.
And he's like on a path, and behind him you can see a couple of old school proper standing up gravestones.
Right.
And then it's basically goes into the darkness, and you can see like a couple of like far off lights in the back. But other than that, there's like nothing else in the sky, no stars or anything. It's totally pitch black. But the main thing is right in the center, massively, there's this mist, this cloud kind of formation type thing. It's very wispy. It got kind of arcs where you see there's the face of Barry saw. I'm not seeing it super. I don't think I've seen it quite as you are, Bear, but like, I mean,
I see it pretty clear.
This is it's not smoke. It's not fog. It's not breath or anything like that. There's something weird. The physics of this is not like, because I mean, you can see that it's a still night, and it's that's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to send the second photo. So this is the headstone that I was standing over when I took this photo was for a little girl named Emma Nichols, and she would have been 13 years old at the time of this school bombing. And weirdly, because we live in 2020, and actually even back then, I mean, this was in 2004. This is a long time ago. I was able to find like this girl's photo online. This young girl's photo online.
Wow.
So I mean, I've looked at this photo so many times that like I'm sure I see what I want to see, but I feel like there's some sort of similarity in there. I feel like in the photo that I took, I can see like bangs of hair, maybe.
Yeah,
I'm not really sure, but anyway.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I see the face plain as day. I mean, it's like to me. It's outlined in the darker portion, and then it just looks like a face to me. It's crazy. And that picture of her is just creepy. I'm sorry, but it is. It
totally is.
And this is 19. What'd you say? 30.
1927.
1927. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and I dug a little bit about this little girl, and I think that she had another sibling who was in the school with her, a younger sibling who was in the school with her as well, which is sad. That whole thing was just a really, really unfortunate scenario.
Sure.
And probably presenting this photo of her alongside the photo I took is like, again, probably a stretch. And like, I've looked at this photo and thought about it for 16 years. So like, It is what it is in my mind, but I don't know. It was just interesting that was like the only experience that we had. It just so happened to be right over the headstone for this little girl. And then that was it. Like we walked around for like another hour, I think, and nothing else happened. So
that's wild. Now, were there other accounts of this before you guys had been out there? Like, had that been discussed or?
I had, so there used to be this really amazing website that was like dedicated to like Michigan ghost hunting. It was called Ghost Zoo. Doesn't exist anymore, but I found this place on that website. Or rather, I found the location of where the elementary school had been on that website, and some people had taken photos there and said that they had seen orbs. You know what, dudes? Hold on one second. My AirPods are dying here.
No worries.
No worries,
man.
Yeah, that photograph though.
It's wild.
She's just a sweet little girl.
Yeah.
But still, that's.
It's intriguing.
All right.
Yeah.
You guys hear me?
Yeah.
Cool. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
So yeah, I'd found this place on that website, and like some people had posted some photos of like what they had described as orbs, but it wasn't anything crazy. And I think we went back there once, maybe a year or so later, and didn't have any experiences. It was just this short moment. I mean, nothing even happened the rest of that night. It was just like that, as quick as a camera flash, and then that was it.
Wow.
So.
Wow. It's intriguing, man. I mean, to me, it's pretty. And we'll put this, if you don't mind us sharing that when we put this episode out so people could look at it, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, because we like getting people. That it gives people another thing to sort of interact with. So
yeah,
that's wild, man.
Absolutely.
I would like to think that if I was a local teen, that I would get some like 1920s type clothes, put a little iridescent paint on there, and then go out at night and just walk around the graveyard to scare people.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh.
But
yeah,
that is clearly not what's happening here.
Yeah, that's wild. I mean, it's just, we've talked before too, any of that type of stuff where you have something so tragic that happens, there has to be an imprint of that kind of stuff. There just does. I mean, in my mind, I know that some people probably look at these things differently. But we've had too many stories about these types of tragedies that happen that, the energy that is left behind is something that you can't really explain until you're there and you're experiencing it, and that situation, obviously, that's a lot of lives that were lost. So I wouldn't doubt that there's something there.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, it's like I went to Gettysburg for the first time this summer, and it's like just a place, like you said, that's so many lives were lost, like so tragically. You can feel that there's something there.
Right.
Well, often when you go to like a historic place, and part of what drives us to go to historic places is that idea that you can feel history.
Right.
You can feel like there's something that happened here that is important to us, culturally, or as, humans in general, where you can feel something, you can feel a connection to the past, but, also, maybe part of that is some kind of, for lack of a better word, like psychic imprint that has been there that,
right.
You can feel like it because, there's something that happens to you when you go to
right.
like, I haven't been to Stonehenge, but, typically people go to Stonehenge or something like that, where it's like this huge thing and you feel something. I guess I've been to the Snake Mounds here in Ohio, and, I went on a whim. I was driving down the road and I saw Snake Mounds. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I thought it was going to be like 5 minutes off the road. Well, it was like 30 minutes away, from the main road that I was on. But still, it's a Snake Mounds. And you go out there and you just feel this thing that, people made these intent, with intent
right.
for a purpose.
Yeah.
And it's not just a coincidence that it lines up with, the equinox or, the summer equinox or the fall,
right.
It's not just a weird, I should probably spring and fall, but anyway, autumn, but it's not, these were made for a reason, and you can feel that you can feel it. There's something that you can't describe
right.
that is there. And that's what, that's probably the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
When you have an impactful event, either tragic or good, that it has that kind of thing. So
yeah, man.
Yeah.
Agreed. I've told the story before that I went to the Hiroshima Museum, and it's just, you walk in and you feel there's a weight, and some of that could be psychosomatic. I don't know, but I certainly feel, maybe if you're not willing to go there in your mind, maybe somebody else may say, oh, that's, maybe you're dreaming that up, but I can't get away from it, and we've had people on here tell stories about going to Civil War sites and getting some really wild interactions with these, entities or imprints and stuff. And it's like, you know, you hear people tell stories about seeing, you know, ghost soldiers and stuff and all that. And it's like, you know, I mean, how many lives were lost in the Civil War? Like 500,000 or something like that?
It was a lot. You know, I should know this because I wrote an article about it for one of the issues of the zine, but I don't remember it off the top of my head.
It was a lot, I know.
Yeah.
It was... I don't know. I can't find it here. I mean, yeah, it was an unbelievable amount, and it was in 3 days. The whole thing happened in worth of 3 days. That's crazy.
It's crazy, man.
They're in Gettysburg. Yeah.
Yeah, in Gettysburg. Yeah. You're talking about a lot of high emotion and despair. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and those are the things that, you know, leave their mark, I think. You know, I mean, and again, that's subjective, but I always try to keep a healthy sort of relationship with stuff, with these stories, because I think a part of it is, you know, if you're not there and you didn't experience it, you know, your experience is your experience, you know. You're never going to be able to explain to somebody exactly what that is until they've had something similar happen to them. And I've had stuff happen to me where it's like, I can't explain it, but, you know, like the Hiroshima thing, I went in there with 3 or 4 other guys. We're all grown men. We all kind of walked in together, and then as we're walking through, we just started separating ourselves because I think we're all sort of just dealing with it. Mm-hmm. And then when you get through it and you're kind of left there thinking about it, it's like the thing it told me was, you know, we can never do that again. You know, it's not worth it. And that's the good thing about having something like that to go see, you know, if you're open to that. But I think we do need to do that. I think we need to be reminded of things like that, you know, these tragedies like that. So I think overall it's a good thing. And I think that's the way you got to look at it.
Yeah. You have to look at your mistakes so that you know not to repeat them, and you know you can move past them.
Right.
You know, I mean, everybody knows that if you don't understand history, you're doomed to repeat it. I should say.
And I think sometimes we get kind of wrapped up in today, and we think, oh, well, nothing bad has ever happened in the past. You know, I mean, like that blew my mind because I'd never heard that story. You think of these types of things happening now, but you know, things like this were happening back then too, and there's something to be learned from it. You know.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you're right about like with these experiences and not being able to convey them fully to people unless they've had something similar. Because exactly like you said, Barry, is like your experience is your experience, and so it's like it's just there are things. I mean, in the same way that like this stuff is like unexplainable, and I can't tell you what it is. I feel like I can't fully convey the experience in a similar way. You know what I mean? Like I can tell you the story and show you that photo and you know, and I don't lead a life that has been full of these experiences. That and then like that house that I grew up in, like that's kind of been it. And I feel like those were enough though and they were like far enough apart to like string me along to like keep me looking for more and wanting to read about more. But it's just like it's hard to define. It's hard to define the subject, and it's also hard to define the experience.
Sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why we do this. We do this for people to come on and tell these stories, because oftentimes we find that people don't tell this stuff to even their closest friends because it's like, okay, I'm about to put myself on the line here, and you may or may not believe what I'm about to tell you. You know, but I think it's getting to be especially with other things that we're finding out. You know, with all the technology we've got for ghost hunting and all this stuff, it's like some of the evidence is pretty overwhelming that there's something out there that we, you know, that we are coming into contact with that we can't explain. We may never be able to totally, you know, say for sure that this is what's happening, but I think the human mind and body, when it experiences something, oftentimes it's pretty correct, you know, those instincts, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Say, Barry.
Yeah.
What's the weirdest job you've ever had?
That's a good question. It would either have to be the time that I worked at a cattle feedlot or the time that I worked for a Greek painter.
Were you his model?
Not quite.
Well, you know, it's funny because one of my weirdest jobs was being a model in art school, but it was portraits, not full body nude. The reason I'm asking is because those jobs may be kind of normal, but we know people are out there that have weirder jobs than that. Maybe you're a mortician. Maybe you're a scientist trying to bring back the dinosaurs or the woolly mammoth.
That'd be cool.
That would be really cool. If you guys out there have weird jobs, unusual jobs, crime scene photographer, maybe you worked at an adult educational film set, if you know what I mean. Wink, wink. Just something that's unusual, out of the ordinary, and, you know, a little bit weird. Hey, those are cool stories too. We'd love to hear those. So give us a call or an email or whatever. You know how to get a hold of us. Be part of the community of Weirdsville.
Well, tell us a little bit about your zine, man. Like, what are you doing in your life to fill your time in these crazy days?
Yeah. So I was like, my job shut down pretty early and stayed shut down pretty late. So had a bunch of time there in the early spring through the summer. And, you know, I have a bunch of great friends and my fiance who are all at the very least, like, polite and humor me and while I discuss like weird shit with them, like, right. You know, it's like
it sounds like our life.
Yeah.
So, you know, like I'm used to going to the bar and like meeting with a friend and being like, oh man, I got to tell you about this crazy thing I read about, or this, you know, whatever. I was like I was a MUFON field investigator for a little while.
Okay.
So
wow.
I would like talk about cases that I would get with that and whatever. So then all of a sudden, like, we're quarantined and I'm like locked in at home with my fiance, and like, you know, I don't want to like tell her every single weird thought that I'm having at every moment of the day. So
yeah,
because you want her to stay around.
Exactly. Yeah. So I had this idea of like, I have some like old issues of like Fate magazine. You guys know, you familiar with Fate?
Yeah.
It's like, you know, classic 4T and stuff.
Sure.
I'm like, they're on my bookshelf, and I was like, man, I should just like put one of those together for fun with like whatever I've been thinking about or been reading about or whatever. So I did that, called it Strange Days, Volume 1. And I think the first one was like 20 pages. It was pretty short and sweet. It was like pretty fun. But I did open up with the story that I just told you guys about my first memory of living in that house that was active. I put that in there, so I like kind of put myself out. And I've told that story to people, but like you were saying, Barry, it's not, you don't tell it to everybody, and like,
yeah.
So it's like a little bit of like putting yourself on the line. But I put it in there. I was like, if I'm going to do this, I feel like I need to add like at least one personal touch experience to it. So I did it. I didn't print very many of them. I think I printed like 35 of them. Didn't even ask my friends if they wanted them. Just asked them what their address was and sent it to them. Something's coming in the mail, and people dug it, and I got good reactions, and it felt like a way for me to like have a dialogue with people that I wasn't able to see in person, or in like, again, my friends were at least like humoring me and reading it and telling me that they thought it was interesting. So I was like, okay, I'll make a second one, and I made Volume 2, and that one I offered to people, just to anybody. I've got more of them printed, and I ended up posting about it on the subreddit High Strangeness.
Okay.
And I got a really good response, and all of a sudden I had sold 75 more copies than I had.
Nice.
And I had to reprint them, and I ended up having to reprint that one 3 times.
Awesome.
Because I just kept selling them. And so I was like, well, I guess I'm just going to keep doing it. So now I've done 4 of them now. The 4th one came out for Halloween, which is we got some pretty rad custom cover art made for it.
Oh man. Nice.
So it's just been a really, really fun project of me just writing about, the strange and unusual, getting friends to write about it, even people that I just met through posting about it on Reddit that have contacted me and had stories. I've had contributors that I haven't even met in person. It's essays and short stories and photos and artwork. I've got a lot of talented photographer friends, so it's photos and a lot illustrations and whatever. And it covers a range of stuff. This newest issue, volume 4, I talk a little bit more. I tell some of the stories that my mom had in that house.
Cool.
And then talk about, I don't know if you guys heard about, in late September, there were these 27 sarcophagi found at a necropolis in Egypt. They unearthed 27 tombs they hadn't seen.
I didn't hear that, man. Really?
Well, it wasn't 27 separate tombs, but it was several tombs, and inside were these 27 sarcophagi, and then there was a dialogue about whether or not they should open them. Right.
Wow.
Oh, is this the one where, or this may have been last year, where they found the big one that was sealed?
That it's the same place.
Okay.
It's the same. It's called Saqqara, I think is how you pronounce it, in Egypt, and apparently it was their main necropolis for 2,000 years. It was so there's a lot of stuff there.
Huh.
So there's a little article about that. A friend of mine who's also from Michigan who lives there now wrote about some dogmen experiences in Michigan.
Wow.
Which is always a fun topic. So it's that's the kind of stuff we're putting out there.
That's cool.
And it's been really fun, and it's been cool to have not just good feedback, but people who read it and then emailing me you guys and be hey, can I print my story? I got something, or even if it's not a personal story, something that they're well read on or whatever, and they want to talk about. It's just been a cool way to to sort of have almost paranormal pen pals.
Yeah, man. Well,
Nice.
I think, and see, Adam and I come from a time when the zine was a huge thing. I mean, you know, especially in music and any kind of underworld sort of genre of thing that you wanted to get into, you could find a zine out there somewhere, but you had to dig a little bit for it, and that was what was great about it, man.
Yeah.
So I love that. I love that idea of continuing that. That kind of an idea, man. That's so cool. And I've got to ask you, so what are your thoughts on Egypt? I mean, it is, in my mind, one of the most fascinating points in our history. What are your thoughts on what went on there?
I totally agree with you, man. I have tried so many times to wrap my brain around Egypt, and I'm not the most well-educated person when it comes to Egyptian history, but even just the other day, my fiance and I were talking about how long cats have been domesticated, and that sort of set me down a rabbit hole of how they were domesticated before Egypt, but obviously Egyptians held them, pretty highly, and so that set me down a new rabbit hole about Egypt that I had never explored before. And I don't know, man. It's how that civilization, there are different opinions about whether or not it should be counted as one civilization or not. But that civilization, if you want to count it as a whole, is what? It's over 3,000 years old.
Right.
I mean, it's just how it, I don't know. I think that it would be a mistake to write that civilization off as I mean, I don't think anybody's ever used this word, so this isn't exactly what I mean, but it would be a mistake to write them off as like primitive or not on like the same.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think anybody has, but like, I don't know that we give them, generally speaking, when the general like consensus or knowledge base about Egypt, I don't know that people really understand like how well developed it was.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, part of it is that I've studied a little bit on it. I took some classes, but part of it is that the way we look at Egypt now is the contemporary Egypt, and the one that we've known for the past 200 years, we'll say. And we know it as predominantly a desert, but it wasn't like that. I mean, it was a very,
lush,
very lush and very tropical, country or land, and it was massive and it was huge, and it lasted, like you said, 3,000 years or something as a culture, I suppose, or if it was several civilizations, like you said, and I mean, they had a lot of accomplishments. They made, they traveled the oceans. We know that they traveled the oceans. They in all likelihood got to North or at least South America. They got out of just their, little area in the Middle East, or not Middle East, in Northern Africa. And, and again, I think also part of why we kind of downplay them is because it is part of Africa. But also, on the other hand, part of the reason that we do have somewhat of it in, the Western culture zeitgeist is because of how it was, part of the Bible, and how where you have two cultures, historical cultures that, reference each other.
Right. Right.
And, so you've got the Egyptians who we can see these big monuments. We see the pyramids. We see, the Sphinx, if the Sphinx was done by them. Where we can see that as evidence, and then so many people use, the Bible and the Torah as historical, literature, or so we have that reference point. But I mean, that's just this tiniest sliver about anything, and it's beyond just mummies, and it's beyond hieroglyphs, and it's beyond the pyramids and all of that stuff. There's so much there.
Right.
And I am somebody who definitely believes in the possibility for alien life. And I've seen weird things in the sky. And, I haven't met an alien that I know of. But I believe that there's definitely, that they exist. They have to exist in some form. But I think to say that aliens constructed the pyramids is, one, it's so dismissive to a incredibly rich and advanced culture that is, so very old. But two, it's a dismissive to us as a human race, that we couldn't accomplish these things before a certain time, before white guys came around and started doing stuff. Because at the same time they were making pyramids and all these things, we were barely getting stones up to stand on the top, in the end like that. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's my little rant.
Are you familiar with Graham Hancock, Andrew?
That name sounds very familiar. Is he an author?
He's written a few books. He's for lack of a better term, I guess he'd be considered like a historian. He was a bit of a archaeological sort of minded guy. He has some pretty interesting views on ancient Egypt, and like he was one of the first guys to start reporting on Göbekli Tepe. That they found this ancient city that was buried for 14,000 years, and they just started to excavate it over the last, I can't remember, 15, 20 years, something like that. But one of the frustrating things that he keeps running up, he by all of his accounts and all of his studies and all of his work that he does in these fields, one of the things that he believes is that Egypt's been around for, could be 25,000 years. you know. But the Egyptologists won't agree because it goes against everything that they have, you know, sort of set into modern, you know, our framework of what we think that Egypt is and was. And he is an interesting guy, man. I would encourage you to look into some of his interviews that he's done. He's done some really fascinating interviews with Joe Rogan. I know a couple of them that he's done. He's been on some other podcasts too, but he goes deep, man. And he's really just a fascinating guy, man. So it's cool stuff that he talks about. So
yeah, I'll definitely check that out. I think, I mean, I'm with you, Adam. I definitely believe in the existence of extraterrestrial life. I don't think they built the pyramids. I don't know that they didn't, you know, have some sort of contact, whether it or not it was like constant or like a one-off thing or whatever, and where it falls in the timeline, who knows? But again, I'm not the most historically read, like when it comes to world history, but I think if I were to rank like ancient civilizations by like higher consciousness, I certainly think the Egyptians are at the top in my mind.
Right. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, it's the spiritual aspect of their thing, of their, you know, their world, the inventiveness of them, their architecture, their art, their everything, man. The whole thing is just fascinating, man. It really is.
Yeah. And just think about how much of that was lost when the Library of Alexandria burned down.
Right.
I was gonna bring that up. That is like one of the most fascinating parts of it for me, is the Library of Alexandria and the lore that has been built up around that.
Yep.
I don't know what to make of it, but it's crazy.
It is cool stuff, man. Well, you got anything else for us? I mean,
I mean, those are the greatest hits, I think.
Cool. Is there anything else you want to plug, man?
Sorry, go ahead, Adam.
I was going to say, tell us how people can, you know, if they're interested in get the zine.
Yeah.
And follow you and all that stuff.
Yeah, so on Instagram and Twitter at Strange Days Zine, just spelled like it is, Strange Days Zine. The issues are for sale. I just have them up on an Etsy. I've got all 4 of them available right now. I actually just got the volume 1 reprinted for the first time. So now,
cool.
You know, before I just did like 35 issues and my friends got them, but now it's available.
Cool.
And then I'm working on like a Patreon to get some sort of extra multimedia up there, like, you know, deeper dives into some of the articles,
Sweet.
maybe like podcast style, roundtable style, and
Sure.
then like I'm gonna throw some video stuff up there as well. That's like my day job is working in film production, so trying to just like round it all off. So
cool.
That's where you can find me, Strange Days Zine. And I mean, thanks so much for having me, dudes. This was a blast.
Hey, man, listen, we'd love to have you back.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
So open door policy, man. Yeah,
I want to hear about the MUFON investigations that you went on.
Cool. I'm definitely down. We can talk about that for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, we'll definitely have you back and definitely discuss that. So
yeah, go support Andrew, guys. Go check out his stuff, and you know, especially in these times, man. You know, it always helps to have something physical that you can buy. You know, that helps everyone out. It helps people give something, you know, to a good cause, you know, a guy trying to do something positive and give you something to do, you know, give you a couple rabbit holes to go down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, totally. If I can encourage anybody to just fall as deeply into the rabbit hole as I currently am, then my job is done.
That's great. That's awesome.
What's your current rabbit hole?
Right now, it's so I read Passport to Magonia for the first time this year. You guys know that one, Jacques Vallée.
Mm-hmm.
It's like one of his. It's not terribly old, but it's like one of his early works, and he got me down this rabbit hole of like. And I'm sure there are probably some nerdier nerds out there than me who will say that I'm not going to phrase this well, but basically he got me thinking like, are modern day or like contemporary modern day like UFO sightings, abduction experiences, and like mythological and ancient fairy experiences and abductions related in any way. And it does the phenomena like change with us,
right?
Like as we become more advanced, like, you know, back like when it was like, you know, Celtic people that had all this folklore about fairies, and now, you know, we have computers and, you know, you know, especially when like in the United States, like in the 50s and 60s, when like UFO sightings and like all the really fun like UFO experiences like started popping off, it's like, was that just like whatever this other thing is, just like adapting with the times, and is it all related?
That's interesting. So, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Man.
It's, I mean, there's obviously no shortage of stuff out there to immerse yourself in these days.
Sure. Yeah. That's awesome, man. Well, thanks again, man. Thank you for coming on, taking time to spend with us, man.
My pleasure. Thank you guys so much, and have a great night.
You too, brother.
Hey, you too, man.
All right.
Take care.
Take care.
Hey, that's a nice t-shirt you got on there.
Oh, thanks, dude. It's brand new. Do you like that? It's one of the official What's Your Weird Story t-shirts.
Where'd you get that?
It's funny that you ask. I just got it off the brand new Spreadshirt.com site for the What's Your Weird Story podcast. There's no www. You just go straight to shop.spreadshirt.com/what's without the apostrophe WHATS hyphen WEIRD-STORY, and that'll take you right there.
I mean, you can never own enough clothing.
Well, it's true, Barry. There's t-shirts for the ladies because, you know, they're cut differently. There's hoodies, which are really cool. There's two different kinds of hoodies, and there's also tote bags, so you can tote your stuff.
That's so cool, man.
So if you guys go out to spreadshirt.com, What's Your Weird Story, currently there are 2 designs, but there will be more going up very soon. So just keep your eyes out for that. And if you decide to get one of their shirts, tag yourself on Instagram to ours or Facebook. Show your love. Show us what you got. Let's see your true colors.
Well, Andrew, thank you for coming on, man. Great stories, and just a cool thing that he's continuing his search for understanding these types of things, and kudos to him for doing that. Yeah, man. I mean, if one of my earliest memories was of living it with a ghost, basically. Yeah. That might be something, I don't know what road that would put me down, but it's really, really cool. Yeah. And growing up in that, and his mom kind of, being cool with it and being like, this is how it is, not hiding it. Yeah. Yeah. And just, again, great discussion. We covered all sorts of things. Yeah. Yeah. That's what we find when we have these conversations with folks. It's like, they're usually interested, in a bunch of different stuff, man, which is what we enjoy talking about. Yeah, the whole ancient Egyptians angle and everything. And yeah, just, it's cool that he took all of his curiosity and all these random facts and stuff that he would just look up, and he's made a zine, and Strange Days zine, and look for it on Instagram and everything, and pick it up. It's really cool. It's, just little magazine, handmade. Each of them are handmade and in that old school style of zine craft. Yes. And it's cool stuff, it's stuff that we like, so if you're interested, support Andrew, pick some of those up from him. He'll mail them out to you. Tell him that, you heard about him from us. And I think he may be even, working on some other media kind of stuff. He might be even put together his own podcast for Strange Days, which would be really cool. So. It'd be great. Yeah. Well, we look forward to having him back on. I hope he's able to do that and share some other stuff with us. And for you guys, if you guys want to come on, you got a crazy story, you want to talk about it, please feel free to get in touch with us. If you don't want to come on, write in and tell us your story, and we will have the lovely and talented Mr. Jeff Hubbard come on and read your story. Either way, we would love to hear what you've got to say. Yeah, we understand that some people just are they're mic shy,
They just kind of get quiet, and maybe you're better able to communicate by writing your story out,
right?
And that's totally cool because we still want to hear it, and when we get those, it's the same thing for us when we are hearing the stories from our guests for the first time. We don't know much of it. We don't pre-read the stories. We send it directed over to Jeff. He holds on to it, and then he comes and he reads it, and so we're hearing it fresh like we do when our guests come on. I may know a few things, or if Barry secured the guest, he may know a few things what it's going to be about. But that's like we're just kind of like, we go in with fresh ears all around. So So if you want to write in, send us an email, send us a message on Facebook or Instagram. If you want to call in and leave a message on our hotline, you can call. It's 513-909-9821. And just, you can leave up to a 3-minute message. But if you want to call it 10 times and leave, 10 3-minute messages, that's fine with us.
Yeah,
we don't care. We'll play it, put it on the air, we'll put it together. I'll make Barry get to work and cobble it together.
Or, also you can, here's another thing you could do. And the reason why I say this is because we had somebody submit a voice recording of an interview that they did. You could do that as well with your voice memo on your phone. You can record that, and then you could email it to us, as long as the file isn't too big. Otherwise, you could zip it over or whatever. But either way, man, we'd be happy to air it and to dissect it or whatever we need to do.
Yeah. So this show is for you guys, and it's by you guys. Everybody that listens, and you're what makes it happen. Your stories are what make us come back and make us have shows and make us enjoy doing this for you. So, it's the community. It's what it is.
Exactly.
So we got to feed the community. Your stories are like the pizza that everybody likes at the buffet. But they also there's some, strange casserole because we're Midwestern. So there's going to be some kind of green bean casserole.
Got to have a casserole
with the onions on top. But still, it's tasty. But you're still going to save room for the pizza.
Absolutely.
So and the dessert. Also dessert. You guys bring the cupcakes.
Yeah.
You bring the desserts.
That's right.
You bring the milkshakes that bring all the listeners to our yard.
Yep.
I lost my analogy there. Started thinking about dinner after this.
I started thinking about potluck dinners at church growing up.
Oh man, those were great. Those are great. So yeah, all right, Weirdsville potluck dinner. Everybody bring a dish of a good story. Email it, or call it, or talk to us in person. We're here for you, and we appreciate all your support on all our avenues. Check out Patreon, where you can get content, and there's going to be that, like we said, it's going to be a new episode which will be going up here fairly soon, and there's all the cool bonus material that you only get there on Patreon, and that helps us pay the cost of running the show. We don't expect to make money doing this because we love it. It's what we do it for that.
Yep.
And it's a joy of doing this and hanging out and hearing from everybody and hearing everybody's great, amazing, weird stories. So, hey, have a good week. We'll see you back here, same weird time, same weird podcast platform, wherever you listen or downloaded this from. Be safe.
Be weird.
As always, if you have a weird story, we want to hear it.
If you have a lot of them, we want to hear them all.
We can't do this podcast without your invaluable contributions.
Whether it's sharing your stories,
listening,
rating,
and spreading the word about the podcast. Thanks for listening. Until next time, be safe.
Be weird.
The stories presented on the What's Your Weird Story podcast are, to our knowledge, true experiences that our guests have had. We can't take the time to research all claims made, and besides, it's just not as fun.